let's start with you, Abhishek. You have a presentation, I believe. Abhishek is going to talk to us about driving e-commerce transactions, specifically using paid marketing, correct? And he heads up a company called ConversionX, and I'm going to leave it to him to do the rest of the talking.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Hi, guys. Thanks a lot to Abhishek for organizing this wonderful event. Opportunity to interact with business owners and share perspective. Just to give a brief background, what I'm going to talk about is exactly opposite of what Ashish spoke about. It's about spending your money and how do you efficiently spend it, how do you make sure that you get ROI out of it. That's what we specialize in at ConversionX, and I think it's both an art and science. So I'm going to make it a little interesting and quick so that you guys can basically carry some of the learnings and maybe apply it to your businesses. So yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Does paid marketing deliver? A lot of people, I think there was a question in the forum. We are generating leads. We are doing all the digital marketing, but it's not converting, right? So who is to blame? Is it the lead to blame, or is it the channel to blame, or is it us to blame? So just to set some fundamentals of what are the key components of when you're trying to spend money online and drive transactions. Because we specialize in e-commerce, so e-commerce has certain specific challenges, which is very different from lead generation, because there's a transaction happening at the moment, right? So some of the metrics we track is obviously CAC, which is cost of acquisition, cost of customer acquisition. So what is the cost at which you acquire one consumer? Lifetime value, how many transactions the customer makes in their entire journey. What is the average value of each transaction? What are your gross margins? What are your shipment costs? What are your return costs? And therefore, what is your net profitability at a lifetime value? Cohort. So cohort is something which we use when we say, how do we segment our spends based on source, based on campaigns, based on audiences, and how do we figure out which is that segment and campaign, which the combination which works for us from a ROI perspective. ROS, which is return on spends. So if I spend, it's very simple, right? If I spend 1 rupee, how much of return do I get? Attribution. So attribution is very critical because you might be spending on multiple channels. So which channel actually is working for you is also a challenge, because you might be getting a consumer through Google, and then the consumer might come through Facebook and transact. So there are different attribution models which we follow in the industry. Typically, it is last click attribution, where we say whichever the source of the last visit of the consumer, that's where we tag the consumer and we attribute the channel. But there is evolution happening here in the US and even in India. A lot of brands have started doing deferred attribution, where they're saying if the consumer has interacted to multiple channels, how do we attribute the conversion to different channels in the respective ratio? RPU is average revenue per user. So that's a function of CAC and lifetime value, and what is the average transaction value. So I'll be presenting you 5 or 6 different approaches to paid acquisition, which has made sense for some of our clients. These are live examples. But before that, I would just like to set the context. Like there are few things you need to get right even before you start spending money, right? So what we basically believe when it comes to e-commerce, it's a function of multiple things. So it's not just about paid media. It's not just about optimizing your paid marketing. It's also a function of product, technology, and fulfillment, which we call as customer experience. So it's like Facebook running an ad, and if the merchandising is not good, if the pricing is not good, if the cataloging is not good, if the payment experience is not good, if the fulfillment experience is not good, you'll get returns, right? Even if you take an order, it will get cancelled, right? So effectively, your CAC will suffer, your LTV will suffer, right? So what we advise our clients is, before you even start paid marketing, why don't you first get your basics right in terms of your technology, your product, your pricing experience? Are you competitively priced? Is your, if you are in e-commerce, are you putting videos? If you're a fashion client, do you have lookalikes? So those kind of things are very, very important before you start driving traffic to your asset. Now, I think this is what Avlesh from WebEngage spoke about. And this is very critical for e-commerce, because what happens is e-commerce is a loss-making business, as we know. So you don't make money on the first transaction of a consumer, right? You make money only when the consumer transacts multiple times with you. So optimizing the user's life cycle is very critical. My CAC for a fashion client would be $800 to get the first order, right? Then how do I engage that audience? How do I make sure that I upsell, I cross-sell, I get referrals, I get repeat transactions? And that's where the life cycle journey, and that's where CRM, along with acquisition, a lot of companies basically run digital marketing in silos. So there's an acquisition team, there's a CRM team, there's a social media team, there's a PR team, when it comes to e-commerce specifically, because everything is happening, at a click. what we have seen is that if you don't integrate all of these functions together, if the customer experience is not consistent, you will not be able to make sense out of your marketing. And this is the third fundamental which we follow. So we had a brief discussion in the last panel about the irrelevance of channel, right? Yes, I think it's highly debatable, but from our experience, channel does make a huge difference. Rightly said that there's a demand-supply gap in Facebook, so Facebook is cheaper right now. So even for B2B marketing, Facebook ends up working great, right? I think at a scale that will break. You will not be able to scale it like that. Very important for us when we take up a client and we take up a mandate to understand what is the client's affinity, right? So we have different clients from different segments, different sectors, and I'll demonstrate you through one of the use cases how that makes an impact. So if you look at this, OnePlus, which is the electronics category, right? Search becomes very important for them because this is a high intent category. The consumer will definitely research. It's a 30,000-40,000 rupees purchase, right? So if you try to bombard the user on Facebook, people will click, but they will not buy because it's not an impulse purchase. It's no one will take a 40,000 rupees handset decision just on the spot, right? So search is where you will hit the most. In case of fresh menu, which is in the food tech business, food tech by definition is a repeat category. So you don't make money in the first 7-8 transactions of the user. You only make money when the user orders once a week, right? So remarketing becomes very critical. So the strategy is to how do you get consumers in the funnel? How do you make them, So we have a metric there which is 0 to 3. So once the consumer makes the first 3 transactions, that's when you start breaking even on your marketing, right? So you have to incentivize, you have to build your funnels in a way where the consumer tries you out 3 times, right? And after that, you start building the cohort and start building the customer life cycle. Less than 3 transactions, it's still under acquisition bucket, right? This would differ for different industries. For B2B industry, it might be very different. Maybe on the first transaction, you'll break even. But in the consumer business, very difficult to break even in the first transaction. Myra. So Myra is a medicine delivery app. They basically deliver medicines in an hour. They are Bangalore based. Now they have a very unique challenge where they're hyper-local, right? So they deliver in respective pin codes and their warehouses are mapped to specific pin codes. So going on Facebook and Google will not help them because although these platforms have targeting options which are hyper-local, it's not scalable. So then how do you reach that audience? So what works best for Myra is SMS marketing, right? So you can always get users from a separate a specific pin code and you can send them SMSs. So that's a very crude way of marketing, but very different use case. It works very, very well for people who are into hyper-local, gyms, spas, fitness chains, hyper-local stuff, right? So SMS works great for them. Rummy Circle. Rummy Circle is a gaming client. It's a real money gaming client. Very interesting use case. Affiliate as a channel has worked amazing for them. The reason affiliate works for them is, affiliate is very, very deal and value-driven audience. And typically, people who are into gaming, into real money gaming, are people who are either, these are not people, who are playing because they love Rummy. Majority of the audience is playing because they think they can make money out of it, right? So that's the audience which actually converts the best. The Man Company, I think this is a case study in itself, right? They've disrupted FMCG industry. Imami has taken up stake in them. What they've done is essentially build a consumer brand via paid marketing. And disrupted a lot of the traditional brands like Dabur's and Imamis of the world who have not been able to reach that audience. What they've done is basically, figure out a very niche subset of the digital audience and create great content, which Ashish talked about, but used extensive paid media to boost that content, to reach that audience, right? To expose the brand. And, they have been able to build a very strong brand recall, especially in the beard category, beard oils, So Man Company is basically very strong there. So different audiences, different businesses, types will have different affinity. That's what I'm trying to say here. So these are the 3 fundamentals we follow. And in terms of, use cases, I wanted to, give some use cases so that some of you might be able to relate to it. The first use case is about analytics. So I'm talking about different approaches to paid marketing. Paid marketing is not just about, Google and Facebook and, running LinkedIn ads and Twitter ads, right? There are different approaches to it. So one of the approach which Rummy Circle follows very effectively is ROI-driven marketing, right? So when we talk about paid marketing, the first thing you want to optimize is CAC, right? Was kitne mein order aayega mera? So that's a very transactional lingo in the industry. Whenever a marketing head or a performance marketing head of a brand is trying to work, he has a goal from the management. Okay, I want my CAC to be X, right? Now, Rummy Circle is completely anti that. What they do is they look at ROI because it's a gaming client, so they look at how many times the user is playing the game, what is our rack rate, how much money we make from that user. So if you look at the traditional approach, it would be, okay, I have a fixed CAC goal. As long as any channel is able to give me users at that CAC, I will keep on spending more and more, right? What happens in that is that your ROI suffers, ROI fluctuates, right? But if you optimize for your business goal of ROI, where you say that, boss, I want to make 10% ROI of the spend I make, right? Then your CAC actually becomes irrelevant. So we have a great case study here where we end up spending on channels which have the highest CAC, right? Which are like 10 times of the industry's CAC, but the ROI is the best because that audience actually is high affinity to that, to that product, right? So it doesn't matter actually end of the day what is your CAC, what matters is what is your ROI. And this might not be relevant for some other clients, so I'll come to different use cases. Sampling. So this is a great technique of marketing which has been done offline for ages. If you can apply the same thing on your acquisitions, a lot of your acquisition can make sense, right? One of the reasons of acquisition is to expose your product to your target consumers, right? To give them a taste of your product. If you believe your product is good, and they will come back for you. So this client, is into men's grooming, right? So they make razors and cartridges and accessories, right? So what we did here is, we started promoting their base product, which is the 5X razor, right? So it's essentially one razor with one cartridge, right? And we spent X rupee on acquiring a consumer who bought that product, right? Now what happens is, we map it to the CRM and we start, engaging that user. We know that after 30 days his cartridge will be over and he will want to come and refill the cartridge, right? So as long as your product experience is good and your communication is consistent, there's no reason why the consumer will not come back and take the cartridge again. So then you build your cohort in a way where you know that, okay, my cost of acquisition is X, my repeat is 5 times in a year, and my margins on per repeat is this much. Therefore, in a year I break even on this user. So sampling is a great technique to drive paid marketing. So creative-based acquisition, I think this aligns well with what Ashish was talking about. So how do you create, great creatives? It's not just about putting a banner ad or running a search ad, right? Because it's become very competitive, it has become very cluttered, like the panel before us was speaking about. So how do you differentiate? How do you stand out in the crowd? So this is again a FMCG brand which does a lot of videos, which does a lot of short format videos, and this does a lot of testimonials, right? So this is in the parenting category where trust is very important. So then how do you build trust in your paid advertising so that your conversion rates go up? And we have experimented there with vanilla ads and short format video ads, right? And the conversion rate difference is almost, as you can see, there's a 50% uplift. And in paid marketing, a 50% uplift is like game changer. So you need to think through, the channel, the medium, the audience, the creative, the targeting. There are a lot of factors behind optimizing your paid marketing. It's very easy to just go and say that your paid marketing does not work. It does work if done efficiently. So content-driven marketing. So this talks about a brand called Nykaa, which is in the cosmetic category. 8% of their traffic comes from content, right? So what they've done and what Amazon cannot do and what they're very confident of, right, is that they've created a community and they've created a lot of content around cosmetics, how-tos, testimonials, videos, all of that, right? So this content actually then drives acquisition. So when they promote their Facebook ads, when they run their banners, they're talking about the content. They're not talking about 20% off, right? They're not talking about Nykaa big sale, right? So that's how they differentiate. And this really works because it creates sticky audience. The conversion rates are great. The repeats are right. So I think that's a very good approach to doing paid marketing. Social acquisition. Like I was talking about, OnePlus, right? So OnePlus does a lot of YouTube reviews, pre-launches when the new models are launching. So we build an entire community on content and influencer base around it, and we spend heavily on promoting it. So this is where paid and organic and influencer and social are merging. So this is a great case study because it says that if you do it rightly, paid can actually help you complement your organic and social. This is very interesting because we specialize in e-commerce, so there's a huge movement towards omni-channel. We work with a lot of brands who are traditional, who have offline stores. What we are seeing is that digital marketing is also disrupting there, right? So, there are technologies like beacons where you can start, tagging consumers who are walking into stores. So imagine on Facebook, there's a feature called lookalike, where, okay, you have 10,000 transacting users on your website, you upload it to Facebook, you say Facebook, hey Facebook, find me, 1 lakh more users who are similar to this, right? But what about your stores where you are getting, millions of footfalls every day, right? So if you can somehow tag those users and tell Facebook that, hey, these are the users who come to my store, now I want to reach them online, right? So those kind of technologies are coming in where we can tag the user's device ID, we can create lookalikes on Facebook. So the amplification of the audience is, 100x of what the digital audience would be. Because 98% of the audience is still offline, right? They're not coming online to shop, right? So for a brand, it's very critical to integrate their offline and online experience and to leverage, both of them effectively. It's not just about, I have an e-commerce website and I have a store and both have separate marketing and both have separate budgets and separate ROI, right? It will merge, and vice versa also. How do you, drive digital audience to your stores? So Omni actually enables that, right? If the user comes to your website and they see, okay, you ran a campaign, you got the user, he can go to your store, he can transact, he can, especially in fashion category, apparels, he can go and actually take a, fit, and, he can decide whether he wants the product or not. So I think that's where a lot of the movement is going in the retail side, merging of digital with offline. So I think Avlesh mentioned about this single customer view. And I think single customer view is not just digital customer view, it's also your overall business customer view. So your customer is interacting with you in multiple points, and how do you integrate all of that and give the consumer a consistent experience? And when you do paid marketing, it's very important to look at it holistically. A lot of mistakes which I see a lot of clients making, saying that, yeah, my CAC is too high, my paid marketing is not making sense. But what about the impact of your paid marketing on your digital footprint, right? Did your store traffic increase because you ran a campaign? So when you run offline campaigns, you look at attribution like that, right? I gave a newspaper ad and so many shoes sold. So I think vice versa should also apply, where you're spending digitally, there's also an attribution to your brand, attribution to your offline sales. And that's where, a lot of us miss the bus. So there's a significant impact of paid marketing on organic also, on direct also, on offline also. So we have to, look at an integrated view there. I guess I'm done. So that's it. I thought to keep it very short and, keep it very specific. I hope it helps. It might be a little technical.
Thank you, Abhishek.